Well, welcome to another edition of Spotlight on Disability with myself, Ellery. And today is another follow-on from last week's show. I was going to refer to it as, because I'm with the policy officer from Disability Wales, Natalie Jarvis. Disability Wales is the umbrella organisation of disability projects, charities, organisations in Wales, and they support them in whatever they need support in. So I'm just going to talk to Natalie a bit about what Disability Wales do, and we'll progress the conversation from there. So welcome, Natalie. And thank you for joining me today. Can you tell me a bit about Disability Wales and what they actually do?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Lee, and I think you did a pretty good introduction. But Disability Wales are the umbrella body for disabled people's organisations across Wales, and they are organisations that are run by disabled people, and usually their causes are usually for disabled people as well. So we support them in their lobbying, in their campaigning, in their support of running their organisations, marketing about who they are, but we also represent disabled people in general across Wales, and we have lots of individual members as well, and we represent them in the Senedd, but also up in Westminster as well. So we do what we can to be the voice of disabled people in Wales.
And you do it very well, I must say. So many DPOs at the moment are getting their responses ready for the TIMS review, and I know Disability Wales are working on theirs currently. Can you tell me a bit about what you found so far when talking to disabled people, and the main points that you're getting from them in conversation? Obviously not in too much detail because the report isn't out yet, but it would be nice to know what disabled people are saying.
I think that's a big question, Lee. There's so much. So if I think about the TIMS review as a bigger picture, it began last year with the Let's Get Britain Working paper first. Then we moved into the UC and PIP bill, and then that was dropped, and now we are working with just the PIP changes and the TIMS review. So Disability Wales have been involved heavily kind of from the beginning. So when the first Green Paper came out, we done a survey regarding employment in Wales, and I think the biggest finding there was that the barrier to employment for disabled people was usually the organisations. Sometimes the way the infrastructure was set up, there wasn't accessible routes in, but also a lot of the time it was the culture of employers as well, and people within those organisations. So we moved on then to the UC bill, and I think the biggest, starkest finding was the worry and concern and panic that everyone was feeling, to be honest. The DWP didn't really take into consideration how scared and the deterioration of people's mental health from the changes they were proposing. The consultation, as you know, was a little bit pushed and dare we say botched. Yes, and we complained, and we done our part at Disability Wales. We went up to Westminster, we lobbied to try and stop those changes. I think we did a good job, and we did manage to halt those changes where they were. However, there's still lots and lots of work to be done. So then we've moved into the PIP the PIP review really with Tim's, and there's been a lot of work there as well. So we did focus groups and surveys, and we used those individual focus groups and DPOs to create a written response. And I know DPAC, the organisation, one of the ones you're involved in, they've done a written response as well. So that was quite hefty. That was a very, very big report. And similar for us, we had to get all these different DPOs from across Wales and squeeze all their voices into one condensed response. So I think that went well. We're used to that kind of consultation, that way of doing things. But then more recently we've been taking part in the workshop in a box. And basically these have been workshops with materials provided for us by DWP and the Tim's Review, and they've basically asked us to host these workshops on their behalf. But that's not without its problems and issues as well.
I was going to say that because I was on one of them workshops with you, as you know.
You were.
And the amount of questions that people didn't understand, it wasn't, even though it was material sent to us by the DWP, it still wasn't disabled friendly. No one could understand what the questions were. So I just don't know where the whole thing is going to end up, to be honest. We're all putting responses in, but my feeling is, are we going to be listened to? I find it hard to say. I don't think we will be. It'll just be do what Westminster want to do, and that's it. It's like with the mobility cuts that we've done a bit of work on as well. They were saying on the radio when I was coming down, anybody that goes over 10,000 miles, they'd have to pay extra to cover the cost. So that's stopping disabled people going out because they're afraid of how much mileage they're going to do.
I think the kind of narratives right now in the media are quite damaging, and we're being villainised, aren't we? We're scroungers, we're taking too many benefits, we're not working, we're not paying enough taxes, and a lot of the time it's like the finger's being pointed at disabled people, and unfortunately I think Disability Wales are trying to get people to realise we need to turn those fingers around and point them straight back at the government a lot of the time.
And this is what I'm coming on to now. Like, we are starting to make changes with the government, I hope, because we had them to sign, like, agree to, the main government is in now, Plaid Cymru, to agree to some of our manifesto, as in Disability Wales's manifesto, for those that are watching. So I think if they stick to what they said when we put the manifesto cards out, I think it'll be okay. But the problem will come if they start saying, "Oh, we didn't agree to that. We need to step back from that." So, do you have any, in case that was to happen? Do you have any idea how we could combat that?
I think there's two different things here, isn't it? There's the Senedd and there's the members of the Senedd, and then there's Westminster and the members up there. And I think in Wales we do a better job for disabled people. I think the action plan shows that we can do co-production. However, the Tim's Review is kind of being governed by the UK government, who don't be seeming to do such a good job for disabled people. We voiced our concerns about the lack of funding for the workshops in a box. So before we asked for funding and before we put that letter of complaint out, it did seem that DWP were expecting organisations to host workshops for free. And they didn't take into consideration the cost that comes with that. So we have to book BSL, we have to book PAL and typists and Welsh language interpretation, and the cost of that alone for each session was £750. So we had to push those workshops online, and they expected us to do these in person with accessible venues. There was loads and loads of problems with the workshop. And not just the funding, but like you said, the questions, some of the way that the questions were posed, the lack of time and consideration that people were given in the workshop. But on top of that, there was numerous occasions where people told us they felt suicidal, they wanted to kill themselves, and that was scary.
It was scary for me actually, because someone said it in the workshop that we were in.
Yeah.
And I immediately reached out to the person after the workshop, and I made sure they were fine, because like the last thing you want to hear is someone's committed suicide after a workshop.
And I think that's the main point. That's what people need to understand, that it's not just proposed cuts, it's people's livelihoods, their ability to live, to go out, to socialise, and people are so scared that it's actually impacting their mental health. And I think one of the main failings of the workshop in a box, for me as a facilitator, was that I didn't have any information to give back to people in that moment in time. There was no backup plan or safeguards or signposting. There was nothing to keep me safe or the people in the room safe.
I hope you reported that back to them.
Very much have, Lee, very much have.
Because that's what they need, I think. If not in the response that you're writing, they need a separate email, but that's for another day, I think.
Another email, another complaint, another day.
As we always do. We seem to be complaining for our own rights these days.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't complain, you don't get.
I agree.
To finish then, if there was anything that you could say about your experience with particularly the Tim's review, and we could get it back to them just for a bit of feedback. Any thoughts?
I think we're thankful that we have had the ability at Disability Wales to take part. Loads of organisations wanted to, they didn't have funding or capacity. So I'm thankful we did get to take part, but in the first workshop there was 12 individual participants and under 25 again in the second.
Yeah.
I do think we're the only DPO, as far as I know, that did host them. And if we think of the number of disabled people in Wales compared to the number of people in those workshops, personally I don't think there's enough representation of different health conditions there. No.
And this is why there's so many other important projects in Disability Wales that support disabled people, namely the Access to Politics project, which I know your colleague Kat Watkins supports as well. So you know, there are other ways of getting disabled people involved, but we can't force them, can we? Really?
I think a lot of the time disabled people are told what they can't do. We can't do this, you can't do that, but not what we can do. And Access to Politics is a great project that shows disabled people how. And soon there's going to be a toolkit launched that actually tells people step by step how to get into politics. But you don't need that toolkit, Lee, because you're already there. However, I don't think it's just the disabled people. Again, it's the parties. We're not going to see disabled people in these parties unless they're invited in and unless the places are accessible for them to be there.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank you for being with me today and wish you every success for the future, and I look forward to working with you in that future.
Thank you for having me, Lee. I look forward to working with you too.